Hey guys, can you hear me?
Sure can.
How's it going? I'm Drew from MakerMade. And yeah, this is just an open Q&A session where we can answer questions, talk about projects, and all things making. So yeah, what can I do to help you?
Well, this is the first time I've ever joined this meeting, and I just recently got the M2, and I haven't set it up all the way. So I just thought I'd be a fly on the wall and listen in to see what people are doing and kind of get some more insights. So
Yeah, that sounds great.
but I do have previous experience with a smaller CNC, so it's not like I get the whole process. I just want to see what people are doing and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, right on. That's what I was going to ask if you've ever used a CNC machine before, because it is
Yeah.
its own bear. And then
Yeah.
this is even more of a particular bear. So yeah, but that's great. Yeah. So I mean, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to chime in, and we can kind of go over some tips and tricks when you're building too. If we got
I'll
time.
tell you one thing I'm really curious about with this CNC. I haven't really seen a lot of videos out there that show real-time cuts, but from what I gather, it's about 40 inches a minute. Is that right?
Yeah, that's usually for the most accurate. Like you
Okay.
can try to push it at like 60 inches a minute. I know that some people have done that to
Mhm.
try to go as fast as you can, but you have to be really careful on like what kind of bits you're using, because you can destroy your bits, you can destroy your materials, and it can just go as it's moving around. You have to just have everything tuned right for the RPMs and everything else based on what you're cutting. So
Yeah.
I would say that probably 30 to 40 is the best.
And do
Just
you know
for
how that
accuracy.
compares? Okay. Do you know how that compares to regular CNCs that would be like a tabletop?
I would think that it's close to the same, but I honestly
Okay.
don't know.
I can't remember
I should
because I
find
haven't.
that out.
Well, I
I
haven't
have a
used mine in
question.
a while, and but it's a Bob CNC is the other one I have. It's
Yeah.
been sitting
Okay.
there for a year and a half, so it seemed like it
It's
was pretty slow just because it was all wooden. But,
yeah. I mean, I know that it's limited by just the gravity in
yeah,
general, and just the technology and the mechanics and friction of everything moving together. The motors themselves can move pretty fast, but then you're also dealing with like the weight of the sled itself
sure,
as it's moving around in relation,
sure.
and you can go faster, but then it can cause problems as you're moving all around with the geometry of it as well. But I
Okay.
think that it's pretty comparable to the speed. I know a lot of the other ones do millimeters a second, and I just don't remember off the top of my head what the conversion is for that.
Right.
But if you look at like millimeters per second, and then you can just convert that to minutes, but that, like depending on what machine you're looking at, it's pretty
Okay.
comparable though. I mean, some of the smaller ones can, if they're doing a really small area, can go faster because they have a
Mhm.
really smaller bit and a spindle with like spindle controls, so they can automatically rate, lower and raise the RPMs and things like that as they're moving around, and they can go pretty quick as they're moving around.
Sure.
And this
Sure.
one can't go that fast. So, for those like smaller type projects, I know that this one can't go as fast as some of those little, a really small one that is like spindle controlled. But for something that's this big, most of your projects are going to be a couple hours.
Okay. Well, then last question. I don't mean to be a meeting hog here, but
No, it's fine.
what do you recommend for centering? Is it dead center of that piece of plywood or lower left, or what's the
So-
overall consensus on that?
So there's a couple things to take in mind for center. So first, you want to make sure that your bit is exactly in the center of your sled. So it's when you mount your Z-axis assembly and your router to it, you want to make sure that's exactly in the center of the hole in your sled. And then once you've done that, then you're going to find the center of whatever material that you're cutting, because 4x8 isn't ever exactly 4x8. It's always off by little bits, usually a little bit more. So you'll measure your actual material and get your exact center. Okay. And then that will help you with your initial calibration. And then just when you're doing other projects and stuff, you'll know where center is on your material. And once you find that exact center, and then you have the center of your frame, which is why we have you mark the center of your frame, you line the center of your material up with that exact center line of the frame. Now you probably can't see this super well, but we have like a center line right here. Sure. When you build your frame, so you mark that to make sure that that's always lined up exactly with center. And when you go to calibrate, one of the main things that you're going to do is make sure that your chains are perfectly equal. And then when your chains are perfectly equal, it knows where center is. So it's kind of like the centering of your chains themselves to know that they're equal, which means that you might not sit exactly in 0 of your material, but then when you know where your material center is, then you can jog your machine up, and then you can set that as your work home, and you can set your material center of wherever you're going to cut. But you can move your work home around to wherever you want. But once you get those initial measurements of the exact center of your material, and then centered that with your frame, and then have gone through the chain calibration to make sure that those are set, then as you switch out different materials and things like that, you can just always set a new work home in whatever place that you want to cut.
Okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, that makes
They can
sense.
kind of move that around. Did you use that with like other CNCs, like work home offsets and stuff? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it did. I did not use it. I always just did dead center, or drew a line in between the two corners, or did lower left. And
so you don't need to as much on like the smaller on like smaller CNCs, but on this one, you're definitely going to want to do that. So just so you don't have to, if you're not making a project that's going to take up the whole thing, then you can use the other parts of your plywood that's on there. So work offsets are great for that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I never would have thought of that.
Remember, Drew, this is Casey. Remember that it's going to be based off of what he sets his home on in his design software. So wherever he sets his 0,
absolutely,
is where you're going to have usually I always do lower left-hand corner on my designs. That way I just know I never make a mistake, because sometimes you're absent-minded, right? So I always do lower left-hand is 0, 0 on any design that I lay out. And then I move my sled over, I put my bit down, and then I place that, and I set that as my work home. That way I can always cut in the center, or a little bit above center, or lower center, whatever it may be. But you use that work home based on your design that you have in easel or whatever the software is. And that's where it'll start its movement from, is 0, 0, just like any gantry CNC.
Cool. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
If you don't know how to change it, then what do you do?
I'm sorry, what was that again?
What was that, Tony?
I've been struggling for weeks, and finally I've got the G code onto Makerverse. Actually there, but it from the center to the right and up is all my image. And it needs to be at the bottom left. Now in easel, because I am paid for pro, what I'm finding is every time I load an image in, there's a little square on the bottom left, and I can't get it to be the full size of my 8x4 sheet. It's like a 300 by 200 sheet. And I'm struggling to get it up to full. Anyway, I managed to do it on one of them by opening another account. But I say, so I've saved it as a G code. I've put it into Makerverse this dinner time, and when I read all the instructions that I've got from yourselves, it says to go into this controls the axis X, Y, and Z and everything, but all mine's grayed out. And so I've looked online, and it says that my machine might be locked, but it's not actually a machine, it's just a little box, really, isn't it?
So is this in easel or?
Right, I've done my G code from easel,
okay.
But there's a little box on the bottom, and I know what it is because I've got a CNC laser cutter, which I use no problems, and I've had it for a year. So obviously, I know it's totally outside parameters, but I can't suss out in easel how to make my parameters 8x4.
Okay.
I put it in there 8x4, but every time I come back to the actual image, I've got that little box there again. And then obviously, and in easel, when I run it to see, it says, oh, there's nothing to put because there's nothing in that particular little box.
So I haven't used Easel Pro, but I think that it's the same way. And you can change your material size in easel. It's in like the top left corner in easel, and I can even log in here and we can look at it, where it tells you your material size.
Yeah.
You can set that to be the full like 4x8 sheet. So you can set that to be the large amount, and then it will expand the view window on the right to fill up that whole amount. Have you done that?
You're totally correct.
Okay.
This is where I'm asking for help now. I need to get back to that point, because every time I open a new page in easel, it's just keeping me. So as I said, I did log in under a different account, and then I managed to do the full thing. But I want to be able to do it on my account that I originally opened.
So are you using the machine, the Maslow?
Yes,
easel?
Maslow M2.
Okay, so you are using that, so that's good.
Yeah, and
but
it's default settings then.
Okay, so it's not keeping the full 4x8 sheet. When you log in, you have to change it every time. Is that what it's doing?
Yeah, and 90% of the time it won't let me change it. I can't save anything because I'm not a pro. I haven't paid for the program, and because it's now tiling, because my image is much bigger than that thing. I need to get back to the point where I can change my my details. I know where it says. It says ply, or it says birch ply. It is, I think, and that's what's selected. But I just can't get back to that. I spent all morning. By it's night time here, and I'm in the UK. Sorry, so I've spent a few hours. I haven't got it with me now. It's at work, trying to do it. But even then, I need to go from on the Makerverse where the image is up on the top right, and I need to get it to the bottom left.
Mm-hmm.
So then hold on,
I'm going to keep quiet for a minute and listen now.
right now, whenever you create your design in easel, whether it's Pro or it's the standard free version, you'll click on, I can't remember what the button is, but it's right up there. It basically asks to define where your 0, 0 is. And when you click on it, it looks like a 5 on a dice, right? You got 2 upper dots, center dot, and then 2 lower dots. What I always do is I click that bottom left-hand dot.
That's what I do.
Then that says that whenever you load your G code, that design, that bottom left-hand corner is going to be 0, 0. Now, here's the thing. When you load your design into Makerverse, what always happens to me is the 0, 0 is not at 0, 0 on my X and Y on my deck. It's always clear up in the top left-hand or right-hand corner skewed, right?
Exactly.
So what you have to do is you then, once you load it, go ahead and manually move your Z axis, your X and Y, move it down to where the corner of your cut board is, lower your bit down, and then on the right-hand side, you'll see X, Y, and Z. And on those, you click on all 3 of them, set work home. And you'll see your whole drawing that was skewed clear off on the top right-hand corner. It'll pull down to the 0, 0.
Yeah, so here, Casey's exactly right. So I realize that I'm logged into my account and I need to switch accounts to screen share. So I'm gonna leave and come right back, and then I can screen share and enable screen sharing, and then I can show you. But I'm just letting you know I'm not leaving.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm gonna just bounce out and I'll be right back in a sec. So.
Thank you to that other gentleman there.
No problem, Tony. And there was another gentleman asking earlier about the differences between the M2 and like gantry CNCs, etc.
Just the speed differences in like some of the, like a desktop CNC versus the M2 itself. Because I know that they're definitely faster, but I don't know the exact. I can't remember the
So remember the physics of the M2, because it's a wall-mounted CNC. It's completely controlled by gravity, and so I have a very large. I actually have 4 CNCs, but my gantry CNCs, I can run those things at If you're looking at inches per minute, I can run those things upwards to 150 to 200 inches per minute. My M2, because it's held by two flexible chains, and it's controlled by gravity, I generally run between 25 to 30 inches a minute. So my time is longer on the M2, but I can cut a larger work surface. So it just depends on what you're trying to do with it, right?
Thank you.
So here's what Casey was talking about that I think, Tony, that you knew about where that was too.
I do this, yeah.
And then I move my projects to 0 too. So it starts where 0 is. I like to do it right in the exact center. So you can move your objects actually around, like off of your space if you want to as well. Because this is just a visual simulation of it. It doesn't mean that it's not going to cut if it doesn't show up on your workspace right here. And then those controls that Casey was talking about in Makerverse here, those are these controls over here. So once your machine is connected and then you unlock it, you can move it around here, and then you can set your offsets right here. So this is how you set your
unlock it
right here. So here, let me just plug my in. I'll show you.
Yeah, you have to have your machine hooked up, and then once you load your G code, you have to hit the reset up there at the top and unlock. Otherwise, the X and Y and Z buttons over there, they stay grayed out because you're in error mode when you first start up.
So once I've downloaded my G code, I need to reset.
Yeah, hold on, he'll show you here in just a second.
This isn't.
So I usually click reset and then load my G code.
All right.
Oh, fresh. Connect this one. Oh, great. Do I have Cura open? Well, can I connect the right one? Well, I'll look at this here in a second. Let me get this one connected, and then I'll show you there.
Yeah, make sure you don't have the laser software or Cura connected while you're trying to
that's what I was
like it.
That's what I was looking to see if I had another slicer opened up or Arduino open back here.
Or Lightburn.
Yeah,
Lightburn will
needs
do
Lightburn.
Well, I don't know. Of course, I'm the one that's having troubleshooting stuff when I'm logging in here because I haven't logged in this machine before. Yeah, I think I've got something open up in the background. So what I do sometimes on my Mac, because this has happened before on my little MacBook Air, is I end up having to restart because it thinks that something is in the port when it's trying to like open the serial port. So sometimes closing down Makerverse can help, and sometimes I end up having to just like restart my Mac, and then that helps it connect. So let's see if I can connect this one right here. But when you first connect your machine, and then it gives you that control there across the top where you can click unlock once your machine is connected. Let's see here. I wonder if I just grab another USB here. So I don't need to actually move anything around. Yeah, I think I need to restart my my Mac right now because it's being wonky. But I can show you guys here when you're in your workspace and you're connected, it'll have a button right here that says restart. Oop, let me share my screen.
I can only see you. That's it.
So right here, when you connect your machine, then it'll have a button right here that says unlock, and it'll be yellow and it has a little yellow lock on it. And then when you click that, then that will allow you to control these movements over here. And then when it's unlocked, you can jog your M2 itself exactly where it needs to go. And then you can set your offsets right here that Casey was talking about to set them at 0. So then you can touch your bit to your surface and set your Z. And then for your X and Y, you can set those at 0 too. So those are your work offsets. So you can utilize the entire portion of your area, or if you just want to cut in one particular part for one particular project or something like that, and you can kind of shift those and move those around. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, Casey, thanks for posting that link. Casey does have several really awesome videos on his YouTube channel that you can go check out. 2 tankards about how to get it calibrated and set up and rocking and rolling on them too.
Yeah, I think I also have the video in there on how to create something, you know, like spec drawing. So I do custom cabinetry and furniture and stuff. So I think that tutorial is in there on how to create something in, what is it, Google SketchUp, and then take it to draw 2D flat file, take it to Makerverse, etc. Yeah, so I think that's in there as well.
Yeah, I think you even put it in Easel. I think you made it in SketchUp and then put it in Easel and put it in Makerverse.
That's right. And that's also on our Facebook page. So that whole video is on our Facebook page, somewhere in there. It was quite a while back.
Anybody on here using Vcarve?
I'm using Vcarve.
Okay. Yeah, I just recently upgraded to the Pro, so that way I could get the 4x8 dimensions, and I was just curious if anybody else was using it as a primary tool, or if there's something else out there that's a little better.
I love it.
Okay.
I have I have Aspire, which is basically the same thing. The only difference is that I can do 3D reliefs.
Right.
So how much is the Vcarve Pro?
Vcarve desktop is, you're looking at $600.
Okay.
Then I had to pay another $300 for Pro, so about $900.
Okay.
And I think his Aspire's upward of 16, 18, isn't it?
Yeah, it's $1,800.
Is it lifetime now? So
Yeah,
you
It
have-
is. Yeah, it is. And the cool thing about it is if you want to upgrade, the cost isn't as much, you know.
Yeah, you just pay the
$300
difference.
upgrade. Yeah.
Awesome.
But to me, it doesn't look like a $600 piece of software. It looks really generic, but anyway.
It's a lot of the
Really
back
good.
end stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of looks like it was written back in Windows 95 or something. I don't know how to explain it.
For me, for some reason, with the MakerMade, with the M2 units, I like to use Easel because it's so simplified and so easy. And, you know, I can knock a design out real quick and throw it into, generate the G code and throw it in there. But for my gantry CNCs, I use Vcarve. So I don't know. I think it's just a personal preference. If I use my M2s, I go straight to Easel. If I go to the larger gantry CNCs, and I'll open up the larger software.
Let me ask you a question. Why do you do, what's the reason for that? Just personal preference, just in general?
It's generally because whenever, you know, the M2 doesn't, it cuts, it doesn't really carve, right? So like if you want to carve a wolf's head or something like that in a piece of oak, the M2 sled design, where it rides on the same surface that it's cutting, it doesn't allow for that. So I think it's just, you know, over whatever time frame, I've just gotten used to Vcarve for the gantries, and you can use Vcarve for the M2. I just think it's overkill.
So do you think that the sled could be extended temporarily for carving? If it were something small and you were doing it dead center, I mean.
You could. I mean, if you wanted to make a 3-foot diameter sled, you know, you can definitely do something like that. But just remember your weight distribution. So if you make a larger sled that's 3/4, it's going to weigh more. You might want to take some weight off, or keep the weight if it, you know, keeps everything centered. But yeah, I've seen people make larger diameter sleds to try to carve in like a 2x2 or a 1x2 area. That it may do that, but it'll be very slow. Because again, remember the M2 it's not a speed demon. It's designed to cut large shapes out of large frame sizes.
And the main thing is to make it cost efficient for everyone to have.
Sure.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
so you can carve, so you can, that was something that I was going to mention too, like right there, like Matt's showing, you can actually put like jigs and stuff around your material as well to help like build it up. So yeah, Matt, can you talk about that? What you got there?
I think I can show you guys, I have mine connected to Makerverse, and I think I can show what you're talking about. Can I share the screen?
Yeah, absolutely.
You are?
I should have gave you ability to do that. So let me know.
Okay. I think it's working here. Can you guys see what I have here?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. So Tony, I'm not sure if this is what you're looking for, but I have like a Batman symbol design here that I'm cutting out, right?
Yeah.
And right now my machine is centered dead center, and you can see this is dead center, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to unlock it, and then I'm going to move it down. I can't see this thing here. Give me a sec here. Okay. I'm going to move it down 50 millimeters, right? So hopefully you can see my sled move down 50 millimeters, right? And the symbol down here, it is keeping where it is, right? And I can even move it, let's say I'll move it this way, 50 millimeters, okay?
Yeah.
So now I can say set work home. Now watch where the Batman symbols go to. I say, this is my new work home, right? And now it moved that down there.
Perfect.
So you can do that wherever you'd like, obviously, and make the most of all of your board. I've cut a number of things out on a single board, and you just keep moving around to where you have an empty spot. Does that make sense? Yeah,
that's brilliant. It's the unlock button. It told me that it was locked, and I thought it meant the machine. I didn't realize the little button on the top, sleep or reset or whatever it is.
Right.
I know it's changed now, but yeah, that one there.
Yeah, so sleep will stop the rain.
Right.
Yeah. So if I get to the normal part, you'll be locked, and you just unlock it. Then you can jog it wherever you'd like.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
Yep. And if you want to go to machine home again, you just hit that button, and it's going to go right to machine home. So.
And I apologize. I missed the button that you clicked to set it down to the lower left area. Where was that at?
So you first need to unlock it here.
Yep.
Right. And then I say, okay, I want to move 50 millimeters down, and I hit the Y to jog it down.
Okay.
And I want to go, left 50 millimeters as well. Hopefully you can see my sled moving. And then I say, oh, this is my new work home. So, so watch where the Batman symbols are right now. And they move down to where the CNC knows where it is. So Makerverse knows where that is, and it moved it down there.
My Zoom was covering up whenever you hit that button. I apologize.
Yep, mine too. Yeah. I had to move it.
Matt, yeah. Can you to show them to better explain this? You see zoom in on your design there.
Sure.
Keep zooming in. See that where the bit is right now on the design, and it shows the two travel lines going up to his cut that he has there. Mm-hmm. That bit right there is in easel. If you're designing and you set 0, 0, the dice, if you set the bottom left-hand corner, that's 0, 0 in easel. So when you load it up here, it's going to show where the 0, 0 is in easel, but it doesn't know where 0, 0 is your work area. It doesn't know where you put that board on your surface for the MakerMade unit. It has no idea. So you have to move it down and tell it, this is where my cut board is, and here's 0, 0 on my cut board. Then you set the work home, And now that's it. The system knows exactly where it needs to cut on your cut board.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you have any questions over here on easel part?
No, but thank you very much for showing that. That's
So-
really good info.
Yeah,
So-
thanks for having a machine to
Right.
connect.
Yeah, so just coming back to this scenario, every time I design something on easel or Inkscape or whatever, every time I've got a G code and I put it into this Makerverse,
Yep.
it's always going to go where the letter Z is now. And then I've always got to move it to the bottom left if that's where I want to have my 0, 0 point from. Is that correct? So
Well-
it always goes to the center.
Yeah, so Tony, like I said, the the M2, the computer, the software Makerverse here, it doesn't know where you put your cut board on that big 4x8 surface.
Right.
It has no idea.
Right.
So that's what you do with your set work home button, is you move that down to the bottom left-hand corner of your cut piece, and you put the bit down and you zero your bit, and then you click set work home. And what that does is then it says, okay, well, up here is where I need to cut that, because that's where the design says it needs to be cut. So Makerverse just assumes that's where your board is, because that's where you set work home.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well-
so the final one on this then is that is part of the procedure
Yeah.
to cut it rather than
That's my
rather
procedure.
being a fault.
Every time you need to
Right.
do that every time.
Brilliant.
So
brilliant.
if you guys will let me for a sec here, I have a slightly different cut piece that I just carved into something, and let me explain. So normally I always have it at lower left here, right? But there are some cases where I want to use a centered piece. So let me just discard this. I'll upload a program. My parents are celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary, so I'm carving something into a cutting board for them. So if you see, I put this one, I centered this one so that I start here, and then that centers the piece on there. So wherever I want to cut this, and again, I can move this point around where I start, but this one happens to be centered. And this is like a Vcarve that I made. This is G code for a Vcarve. Do you see what I'm saying here? So it doesn't always have to be in the lower left. On this one, I specifically wanted it in the middle. And I didn't use easel for this. I used something else, but it specifically, I said, okay, in the middle. And then as somebody mentioned earlier today, I find the middle of the board. I draw a little X there. I put the bit right on that X, and then I know that that's going to be centered on that board or whatever I'm putting it on, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but you can still move this around. I mean, if I want this over 50 more millimeters here, so now I'm at 100, I just say set work home, and you see it moved my drawing, over there. So I just told it on this particular cut that the center is in the center is where I'd like to start, but most of them that I do in G code, they all be down here. In easel, excuse me, most would be down here. But this one, I didn't want to figure out where it was centered and then left-hand corner. I just wanted to center this cut on that cutting board that I made. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the times that you want to use the center instead of like a bottom or top corner,
Yep.
you'll learn over time that if you have a 1/2 meter by 1/2 meter square board and you're making, let's say, a cutting board, like what Matt was showing there, you want those words perfectly centered in that board. So that's when you would use that centering component instead of the bottom left or right.
Yeah.
But I mean, you'll learn that over time. That's just nature of the beast.
Yeah, and that's basically for any CNC machine.
Yep, exactly.
I have another question.
Yeah.
For the actual wooden machine part now.
Yep.
I've built everything up. Everything worked fine. But I've put a backing board on of 12 mil on top of the other board that you advise us to put on, the actual frame. But even then, if I was just to put a 12 mil board on, you've told us to put 1/2 inch or even wide 1/2 inch borders all the way around. But I haven't done it yet because I haven't got it working yet. But I can see straight away, as soon as the sledge goes to any side, it's going to whip this border that I've put on. So I've took them off. Is there a reason why you've said 1/2 inch rather than 1/4 inch or something?
So that is a variable thing. 1/2 inch is kind of a good like middle area for a skirt itself. So you can see like Matt's setup right there where he's got, and I'm assuming that's probably for his cutting board. Is that correct, Matt?
Yeah.
So that's a skirt. Like he made a skirt around it, and the 1/2 inch and the, you know, on the edges of this is just a starting place to help you get started from. And like the main one that you want to have is something for like a full ply to sit on. So so it's way easier to mount, and you can make sure that it's perfectly level. So you could even use a 2x4 for that if you wanted, if you weren't going to go all the way down to the bottom. But if you were going to go down to the bottom, well, your sled's going to bump into that 2x4 because, as you said, it's going to either be sticking out or it's not going to be, or it's going to be beneath it. So the skirt is very much a pliable, movable thing, depending on like what project that you're working on or what.
Yeah, and the skirt, you make each skirt the size of each of everything you're going to use. So if you're going to use 1/2 inch material, you use a 1/2 inch skirt. If you're going to use 3/4, then a 3 inch skirt. You know,
yeah, because it looked like that Matt just used scrap wood to make a skirt around that.
Yeah.
So can you talk about that a little bit?
And I did that because I didn't want the sled to fall off. The cutting board was 1 1/8 thick, and I didn't want the sled to fall off the edges when I was carving near the edges, because that would pull the bit off of my work piece.
Yeah.
So I made the skirt 1 1/8 around all the other sides, so it wouldn't fall off when it got near the edge. But that's essentially just a small part. You could do the whole skirt around there, and 1/2 is probably pretty good. I cut a lot of 1/2 inch plywood anyways, so. But I don't have a skirt on the other sides of this work piece. But you know, if I was cutting a full sheet of plywood, I definitely would put a skirt on the sides of my piece. Yep.
Oh, so again, it's something that is interchangeable with each thickness, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
So Tony, you can put a skirt all the way around your 4x8 cut surface, but the reality is the only time that's going to be useful is if you're loading a full 4x8 sheet of plywood. What I've found over the past 2 years is I rarely cut a full 4x8 sheet of plywood. Most of the time it's 2x2 or 2x3. It's an odd shape. So what I tend to do is I have lines on my spoil board, my surface, and I'll put a board up there, and I just use a pneumatic small pin nailer, and I'll put 2 or 3 small nails all the way around the edge of it. And then I will take scrap wood, 3/4 inch plywood, and I'll put around that. Yeah, just like that. I'll just nail that up there. And then that's my skirt around that board, around my cut piece.
Yeah.
That's all I do. And by using the little pin nailer, I have a little piece of a little pry bar. I just slide it under there, pull it back, pull the whole board off. The pin nails come right out. So it makes changing out. And then I don't tear up my spoil board with screw holes and everything else.
Yeah, I think a little nailer that's a great idea to be able to just switch them out easy, because then you can easily pull them out when they're just hardly tacked in there. Because you can see this, like we have this up here because we cut something on this that didn't go the full length on the edges, so we don't have a side skirt. So you can see we don't have a side skirt here or over on that end, but it did go to the edges on the top and the bottom. So that's why there's a top skirt and a bottom skirt on here, but we didn't put the side ones on for the last thing that we cut. And then the project that we're about to cut out now isn't going to go all the way to the edge either. And then we just left this up here because there's no reason to take it down really, because we're not going to go up there, but it's just there. So it's very much up to you and what project that you're doing.
So the material that you're cutting, is there a limit to the thickness? I mean, is it constrained by the size of the bit, or is there a constraint on the CNC, or how does that work? Because I'm typically using, not all the time, but I use a lot of 1.5 inch stuff. And I didn't know if maybe the chains need to be recalibrated for something that thick or how that works.
No,
Yeah,
it's possible. You're just gonna have to adjust your ring, the ring right there for the material. That way, because you need your
Sure.
chains to be parallel. That's the
That
main thing.
and your speed. So
Sure, sure.
I've cut 1.5 inch with the MakerMade. I've cut 1.5 inch cutting boards, or they were like grill boards. You know, Texans, they like to do a lot of grilling, and they'll do 30 pounds of meat at a time. So these
Yeah.
boards are big and heavy. And whenever I cut those, I mean, you've got a lot of bit sticking out there. And think about the M2, the dynamics, the physics of it is it's designed to rotate around the bit. And also, when that thing rotates, it might slide side to side 1/2 mil or whatever. So at some times, especially when turning corners and things, you are cutting on the sides and the tip of that bit. So I found that running faster than 10 millimeter or 10 inches per minute, maybe even 8 inches per minute when cutting really thick stuff, that I ended up getting a good solid piece out that was nice and smooth.
Thank you.
If you try to run faster with a longer bit, I think, you know, I had my sled kept twisting. It rotates on the center axis. The sled, you know, you especially depending on the wood you're cutting. If you're cutting a harder wood, an oak or something like that, yeah, the M2 needs to be slowed down so you don't burn up your bits.
So you're slowing down and you're probably doing multiple passes too, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Not only
Now,
going-
I use a 618 EVS router, so I can go up to a 1/2 inch bit. So when I'm cutting really thick, hard material, I'll go all the way up to that 1/2 inch bit because I can go down half the thickness. That means I can do a 1/4 inch depth on each
Right.
step or each pass.
And that's
And if-
exactly what I was gonna ask next, because I bought some 1/2 inch bits.
Yep.
Another thing to keep in mind too is where your router is in your clamp. So if you're going to be cutting something that's that deep, and really as a good rule of thumb anyway, you want to have it clamped down here close to your material. That's a tip that I've heard from several different people that I've used too. That's really nice. So it's just preventing it from being wobbly. So you can see that here how it's clipped down here where that RPM is going to be spinning. So that's going to give you more depth, and then also because it's closer to where it's actually spinning. It's instead of it being held up to the top where it has more wobble.
Deflection.
in your
That's
cut,
that's
it's
your
holding it
bit
down
deflection.
here. Yeah, exactly, for your bit deflection. So
Yeah,
that's
but-
something to help too for those larger cuts, is to make sure that your router is in their proper place.
Yeah, and the most important is that the bit is dead center of that 3 inch circle in your
Yep.
sled. Because every time your sled rotates as it's cutting, it'll hit harder piece of wood, some softer, and your sled kind of moves around, it rotates. It's designed to do that. Well, if your sled isn't perfect or the bit isn't perfectly centered in there, then you'll end up with a kind of a wonky cut. Whenever it finally comes out, it'll have waves and, you know, it
Sure.
won't be perfectly straight.
You guys
So
using
Casey's got a
dial
sweet-
calipers to doing that, to center that?
If you have a 3D printer, Casey has an awesome bit exacting tool that you can that you can get. You can get the file, or he can print it and send it to you. But yeah, you can use calipers as well to find the exact
Okay.
center.
That's a good idea. All right, I didn't think of that. That's right. When you said that, it made me smile. I was like, yep, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, a lot of people have asked for these over the past couple of years. So I have a design for a 1/4 inch, a 1/8, 1/4, and 1/2 inch bit. It's a little kit. You just drop it down in the hole, and it's perfectly sized to the size of the bit. So when you put the bit in there, or you loosen up the frame on your M2, you can actually move that forward, drop your router down into it, and your router won't wobble. And then that tells you exactly where to slide in the bolts to bolt the frame down on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Matt's
Awesome.
got those wooden ones too, right there.
Nice and easy.
I cut these out. So I'm making tools of my CNC for my CNC on my CNC. So I cut these circles out at 3 inches, and then I just had the drill operation go through on one is a 1/4 inch and one is 1/8 of an inch.
Can I just ask, on the easel, you've got 4 cutting lines. You've got a cut out, you've then got an outside, an inside, and on. Now, if I buy an SVG to cut out, or if I do an SVG to cut out, whatever, which one do I choose to cut it out? If I want the product that's inside the line, do I do it to the outside line or center or inside line?
So it depends very much on what your project is. So if you want it to be dimensionally accurate toward the outside, then you would cut on the inside. And then the opposite is true. If it was dimensionally accurate on the inside, then you cut on the outside.
Right. It's a dinosaur.
It's a really complicated file. Maybe it's more of an artistic
it's a
file,
dinosaur
like that.
with
A dinosaur,
16
yeah.
with 16 mil slots.
Okay.
So if I do
So
it
probably on
too
the line.
tight, the slots won't go in. If I do it too loose, they'll wobble.
So that's probably an on the line.
On the line
is what I would guess. If it's something that's going to be slotted together to fit, you just want to make sure that you're going to cut them all the same. So for like really intricate projects and projects that have smaller bits, like when a lot of times when I cut something with an 1/8 inch bit, it's more like artwork or something like that. That's going to be that the M2 is doing. So I'm cutting on the line as it's moving around while it's cutting to make sure that it has spaces between all of those different cuts that I'm doing. And even especially if you go down to like a 16-inch bed or something like that too.
Right. Well, that's the other thing I was talking about. I put a 16th, what you'd call a 16th inch bit in, and I've put my settings to that or whatever it is. But I've got the ability to put basically 1/4 inch in as well. An 1/2 inch, is it 1/2 inch as well? I've got the ability for the whole range. What bits would I put in for speed and what bits would I put in for accuracy?
So I can answer that. So
Yeah,
all your bits are going to have the same accuracy, right? The difference is the detail. The smaller bits, including like 60-degree V bits, they come down to a very fine point. So it's going to give you very, very fine detail, and it's going to give you the edges. But no matter what the bit is, if I'm cutting with a 16th inch bit, that's very slow because you'll snap that bit. I mean, you have to cut really slow. And remember, your depth per pass is based on half the radius of your bit. So if you have a 1/16 inch bit, right, then that means your depth per pass is a 32nd every time it passes. That will take you forever to cut through a piece of 3/4 inch plywood. If you go up to a 1/8 inch bit, the depth per pass is the same rule. It's half the radius of your bit. Same with a half. Right. So that's why when I cut large, thick material, I'll go to the 1/2 inch bit because I can actually cut down to a 1/4 inch on every pass. Right. It's going to take me 7 or 8 passes to get through 1.5 inches of wood or whatever, but it's better than 70 passes, right, with a 1/4 inch bit. Now, the speed that you're looking at for the 16th inch bit, I would not go over 10 inches per minute. That's pushing it because that bit is so small and fine. And I broke many of those. Your 1/4 inch bit, you can probably hit about 15 to 20 with the proper depth per pass. And with a 1/2 inch bit, I hit 25 to 30 with a 1/4 inch.
What brand of bits do you guys recommend? Like I bought some Frid. Is that how you say it? That's better than the other that you can sharpen, or
I don't sharpen any of my bits. I toss.
Okay.
When they're done. It's just too much of a pain to try to sharpen those things. But there's a huge range in price out there. MakerMade makes some that are very price competitive out there. I've got a bunch of those. I probably got 30 bits from MakerMade. If I buy them from the open marketplace, you know, just buy them on Amazon or something, I found that White Side, they're medium price point. They're not at the high end, but they're also not at the low end. And I get good life out of them. And like I said, I trash them when I'm done. I don't try to sharpen the things.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Casey, thanks for that. That's awesome. And on as far as bits go too, a lot of that's personal preference. Like you can spend more money. Like, yeah, you can buy a $50, $60, $80 bit if you want, but then that could still break. If you're cutting a lot of MDF, that could still gonna break and wear down. So you can get, you know, a whole bunch of really cheap bits, in particular, if you're gonna be cutting a lot of MDF, because that glue and stuff can really just wreak havoc on them and cause them to break. So then you can be swapping those out, or you can buy, you know, up the rate of bits that you're going to get and get some that will last like a little bit longer. It's really up to you and what type of material that you're going to use, for sure. But yeah, we've got lots of bits that you can find, and Amazon is a great resource for bits. That's probably the best place to find all kinds of different ones. And then something that I would recommend though too is, like, once you find somebody that you like, go to their website and then look at their bits from there and see, and you can find more information about them and maybe even find stuff that they don't have on Amazon too. And find what they like.
And then one other thing I was just thinking about with these bits, and somebody mentioned earlier about you got to think about the gravity and everything else with this machine. And again, I haven't set it up yet, so that's why I'm asking a lot of questions. But on my old CNC, it seemed like I could set a speed on how fast that bit penetrated the wood before it started carving any direction. Is there a setting like that on the M2 as well that I need to be mindful of how fast or how slow do I need to go to penetrate it all the way before I start moving it?
Yeah, that's in your easel. Whenever you have your design in easel on the right hand side, whenever you click on that menu, it'll pop up, and that's where you put in the design or the size of your board, the thickness of your board, and then that's also where you set depth. It's called depth per pass in the software, and then inches per minute. But those are the two. So how deep it cuts for every pass and how fast it goes on every pass, all of that is set in easel. It's pretty simple. Now, here's just a pro tip for you folks. I don't work for MakerMade, so I use a lot of their products, but MakerMade, the Makerverse software, for some reason, it does not like standard units. So everything I do is in metric. Everything I do is in millimeters. In easel, I click the little button on the side that says, you know, inch versus millimeter. And I get a lot more accuracy when I load my G code into Makerverse, because Makerverse, its core was designed with metric in mind. So that everything I do is in metric, and I set all of that in easel. So
that's a great pro tip, because that's something that I do so second nature that I forget to even remind everybody to make sure that you do that, because it automatically will convert everything. So if you make stuff in inches, it will convert it. And when it comes into Makerverse, especially if you're going to do something that's going to be press fit or something that needs to be high accuracy, then it's going to change those if it's all in standard and it's changing it to metric, because it's always just going to be off by those tiny bits.
And it'll always round your measurements. So it's in decimal points, right? So whenever you get into, you load something, you design something in Makerverse in inches, and then you load it into, or you design something in easel, then you load something in Makerverse, it'll round those measurements, and you'll find you might be off 3/32, right?
Gotcha.
And it's kind of a pain in the butt, because you're wondering, what the heck am I doing wrong? It took me hours to figure that out.
Yeah.
A lot of time behind the computer scratching my head. And then I finally figured out, just do everything in metric and it comes out perfect every time.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
So here you can change your inches to millimeters here. And then over here is where you do the depth per pass, right? On this one, I'm using 30 inches per minute plunge rate of this, but the depth per pass is like 1/8 of an inch. You switch it to millimeters here, and it changes all these settings to millimeters. So it's 3.1 millimeters per pass, but you can change all that settings on the manual. it'll come up with automatic, and then you say, oh, I want to change it to manual, and change those settings. If you want to go a little slower, or if you want to go a little faster, or if you want to go deeper on each cut, you can change it there.
Yeah, so the thing about easel is the company that developed the software easel, they sell their own bits. So if you go over there and you click on the cut settings, those cut settings are based on their bits, and it's not based on the MakerMade M2 sled design. It's made on it. These measurements and the speeds are based on a gantry, a smaller gantry CNC. So what I find is I always have to go to the manual one and adjust it, because the standard rate and everything that they have is always way off. It's not what it should be.
Right. I do that too. Every time I make a project, I change these settings, the feed rate, the plunge rate, and the depth per pass. So
Is there a general guide somewhere for the different passes, depth passes per?
I'm making it.
Speed rate? Is right. I mean, I've had a laser cutter, and I'm a year in, and I'm still now sussing out different speeds and power to get a certain depth, even after a year. So I know it's not easy to. What I'm saying is there anywhere that there's sort of like a list of this size bit, this depth, this speed?
So we have a bit article that's got some information and stuff about that. Then the main part, answer your question, is I'm working on it. So that's going to be part of the calibration guide at the end. I'm going to put a whole bunch of tips and tricks and things like that to help you get started with cutting. So I planned to have that done this week, but I don't think it's going to be done this week. It's going to be done next week. But it's going to have some basic tips and tricks and stuff like that of just things that we've heard from the community and users and our own settings and all that kind of information, all in one place, appendix chart of like bit settings for different types of bits and different types of speeds for those different types of bits and suggested ranges and all of those different things. There's another one that I'm going to work on after that, that Joel and I have been working on too, about cut settings and things like that for different types of programs. So then if you want to do it in easel, or if you want to do it in Vcarve, or if you want to do it in Carbide 3D, or wherever you want to go and cut your projects out, you can follow these kind of like basic tips and tricks and use any G-code generator that you want. So we're working on that too, but that one's probably going to be a little bit longer. But the really basic settings though, like the depths and the speeds, are going to be in there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just to shout out that these questions like this for bit settings, size, depth, plunge rate, all of that, if you just post that on the Facebook page, you'll get a lot of people that'll reply. So it's really fast, really simple.
And that's the term I was looking for earlier, was plunge rate. Sorry about that. I was saying penetrate the wood and how fast and all that, but it's plunge rate, I think. Yeah,
the plunge rate, to be honest with you, I rarely ever change that, because you'll look at the Z axis on the M2, it moves slow anyway. So what's the difference, right? I never change the plunge rate. It's always depth per pass, and it's always my inches per minute or millimeters per minute.
Yeah. So how long has the M2 been out now? And is there plans for an M3?
So the M2, it's been out now about a year and a half, but it's been through a couple of iterations, but it's been out. July 2020 is when it was launched, but it was in development way before that even. And yes is the answer to that. There is stuff and plans for a new one.
Cool. Well, I tell you what, I completely understand, but I tell you, being a first-time person on this meeting, I can tell there's a lot of passion, and this is just a great way to share knowledge. And you'll be seeing me every Thursday, so that's why I'm asking. And I don't
awesome.
Set up yet. So
yeah, well, we'd love to see how far you got next week, and I'll be here to hang out and field questions and share.
Hopefully next week I can show you my dinosaur.
That's right. Let's get that dinosaur going.
I want to see that alien that Matt had up earlier. I think it was him. Yeah. I'm gonna make a Sasquatch and put it out on my fence and put a light under it for motion
Oh,
detector. So when somebody walks up out there on the fence line, they'll see a big Sasquatch.
That alien, oh, that's sweet. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's what I want to make. I bet my wife would like that alien
Have you
too.
got your camera on mirror image there?
That's awesome.
Nice one.
That's awesome.
I did this for
Yeah.
Halloween. I did this for Halloween.
Exactly.
I like the different colors of the eyes too. That's rad.
It's good, yeah.
That sounds cool. All right, guys. Well, do we have any more questions before we go?
That's it, thank you. I'll see you next Thursday when I'm trying again.
Hey, we'll be here, Tony.
Thanks,
All
guys.
right, well,
Appreciate
take
it.
care. And if you ever need anything, just reach out with us at support@makermade.com or in the Facebook owners group, as Casey mentioned, and we'll get you going.
Okay,
Cheers now,
great.
bye-bye.
Hey, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.